Hey everyone, Samantha Farley here. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, this is a video series on type 1 diabetes and my experiences with type 1 diabetes. So if you like what you see here today, and if you've watched any of my other videos, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll be doing lots of videos on my type 1 diabetes experience and some tips and tricks I've learned that hopefully I can help you as well if you're a diabetic, or if you're a caregiver, or whatever the case may be. I'm hoping to help you all throughout my journey and helping you through your journey as well. Today, I wanted to do a video about the mistakes I've made as a new diabetic and what I've learned from those mistakes. And we'll go ahead and get started. So when I think about the mistakes that I've made as a newly diabetic, I mean, there's been thousands. That is just the learning process of being a new diabetic in this world, going from a working pancreas to a non-working pancreas. You're naturally going to make lots of mistakes. So the other day when somebody said, you know, what's the biggest mistake that you've had so far with type 1 diabetes, it actually took me a while to think about it and figure out, you know, what was that big mistake that I made? Because the word mistake, it's hard to say that what I've been doing are mistakes, even though they are. Like, you know, I didn't dose right, maybe I didn't give myself enough insulin for a certain amount of food. I mean, all of that technically is mistakes. But I think biggest mistake as a new type 1 diabetic was listening to my doctors. That is probably the biggest mistake that I have done. And that might sound silly, especially if you're a new diabetic and you want to be trusting your doctors. And don't get me wrong, doctors know a lot about the educational side of diabetes and, you know, what they learned in school and what they've seen and all of that. That's great. That's great. We definitely need that. But they might not be a diabetic themselves. And so they don't have the experience aspects that a diabetic doctor would. And my doctors, when I was in the hospital and when I was diagnosed, did not have type 1 diabetes. They didn't have diabetes at all. And they only knew what they learned in school and through education, which, like I just mentioned, is great. And sometimes you do need that information. However, the mistake that I learned and have learned after meeting with my doctors and my educational specialists and all of that, that they don't know what they're talking about half of the time. And it's really frustrating because you want to trust your doctor. You want them to give you the best information that they possibly can to help you live your life, because this is literally a autoimmune disease where if we don't take it seriously, we could die. And so you want to trust your doctors. I mean, 100%, you want to trust them with every single word that they're saying. And I've learned that you can't really do that. And so that is the mistake I made in the beginning, was trusting everything that my doctor said. And I'll give you an example here. So when I was in the hospital, when I went into DKA, I was in the hospital for 2 days. And when I was wrapping up on Saturday, they told me I could leave. Obviously, I was so excited about that. And they said, like, in the next few days, make sure you go see your endocrinologist and she'll help you, you know, figure out a plan going forward. But until then, we're going to have you take 5 units of insulin for every meal that you eat until you see your endocrinologist. And as a new diabetic, I'm like, okay, sure. Like, I'll do that. I'll take 5 units of insulin for every meal. So they wanted me to take 5 units for breakfast, 5 units for lunch, 5 units for dinner. The other thing, though, that they told me while I was in the hospital was to eat minimal carbs. So they said, you know, they showed me those pictures that look like they're from the 1970s. And let's say 80% was broccoli and kale, 10% is meat, and 10% is potatoes. So in my head, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be eating minimal carbs. In those photos, the only carbs are the potatoes, okay? So when I left the hospital, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I have to eat extremely healthy. I have to eat a lot of veggies. I can only have very minimal carbs, because I'm trying to do the best I can do as a new diabetic, right? I'm taking in all the information they're giving me and trying to be the best diabetic I can be out of the hospital. Basically, I started taking 5 units of insulin for every meal, and I was eating mostly veggies. So if you've been a diabetic for a while, you know that your insulin to carb ratio needs to be aligned. Well, I was still, and still am to this day, in the honeymoon phase, as in my pancreas still worked a little bit. And so 5 units of insulin was way too much insulin for me, let alone I wasn't even eating any carbs really. I was maybe having 15 grams of carbs at my meals, maybe. And I was taking 5 units of insulin for those meals. So my first week as a diabetic, I went low, extremely low after every single meal that I ate, because I was taking so much insulin for so little carbs. But I didn't understand what was happening at the time because I was such a new diabetic and I was just listening to my doctors. It's very upsetting to me because someone should have educated me more about that process. Someone needs to be educating the doctors about the process of a new diabetic, because they did not know that I was going to drop with 5 units of insulin, which is mind-blowing to me. They're supposed to be my doctors. They're supposed to know what's going to happen to me if I take insulin. If I take too much insulin, I will drop and there's a chance that I could die. You can even ask my boyfriend about it. He was furious with the hospital because every meal I would drop. And I was so new, I hadn't met with my endocrinologist yet, that I didn't want to change anything because I didn't want to go high, right? Because I went to the hospital because my blood sugars were high. So I didn't want to be like, okay, I didn't know that I could take less insulin. I didn't know what that meant at this point. And I dropped every single meal. And I thankfully knew that when I go low, I have to eat sugar. I was going through, and I'm not even joking, I was going through the big jugs of apple juice. We had to buy like 3 to 4 a week because I was dropping that much for my meals. A week later, I went to my endocrinologist for the first time, and she was shocked that I was taking that much insulin. She immediately lowered my insulin, but she told me to take less insulin. She knew that they gave me the wrong amount, and it was terrible. But I really wanted to give this video of that experience because that is the biggest mistake that I made back in the day, which I'm not blaming myself for. I mean, I think everyone should be able to trust their doctors, but the doctors in the hospital weren't educated enough, in my opinion, on type 1 diabetes, and they could have killed me. While I was in the hospital, they were saving me because my blood sugars were high and they were giving me insulin to get back to normal. But then they sent me off on my way, telling me to take a ton of insulin and also eat no carbs, and they could have killed me. The doctors literally could have killed me by their prescription. Right now, with everything going on in the world with big pharma scamming people with their pills, is just, it's sad because I've never realized any of this before I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I didn't really think about big pharma and like how they're scamming people because I wasn't really on a lot of medication prior to type 1 diabetes. And now that I'm in the type 1 diabetic world, and now that I'm on insulin and I see how much big pharma, Eli Lilly is scamming people, Abbott is scamming us diabetics, it's so sad. And it's sad because these are the companies that the doctors are associated with, and they're the ones prescribing the medication to us. And don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming the doctors for the high insulin prices or anything like that, but I am blaming my doctors at the hospital for telling me to use 5 units of insulin when I don't know anything about diabetes. If you're a new diabetic, take what your doctors say with a grain of salt. I know you want to trust them and I know you want to believe everything they're saying, but that's going to be hard to do, especially if they don't have diabetes. If they have not experienced it themselves and experienced what a non-working pancreas is like, they're not going to understand fully. They're only going to get the educational part. of it, and it might not align with what you need as a diabetic. So that is my story of the mistake that I made and what I've learned from it. And I hope that I can help you guys out. If you're a new diabetic, try to do your own research and figure it out on your own, because doctors don't know what they're talking about all the time. And it's unfortunate because that is their job, but it is what it is. And this is a disease that we have to handle on our own with the help of doctors, but it really is our disease and we need to figure it out on our own. So anyway, don't mean to be depressing here, but thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you got something from this. If you have a similar story, I would love to hear about it. Like, comment below and let me know if you have a bad doctor story where they told you to do something that made 0 sense. And I really hope that you guys continue to watch these videos and it's helping. I'll see you guys next week in the next video. Also, before I leave, let me know if there's something specific you want me to talk about. You can comment below and I will be glad to share anything related to me, to type 1 diabetes, to really anything. So comment below if there's something you want to hear or something you want to learn, and I'd be happy to share it. But I keep doing these videos weekly. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys later. Bye.